It's so great to be with you guys today because, you know, as Guillermo was pointing out, was pointing out, I actually left IBM to do this because I was so passionate. I had been doing a bunch of AI solutions. I was the offerings executive for our cognitive services area at IBM. And I just watched over and over as clients and business leaders and data scientists, they were kind of taking these things on the chin, just very nonchalantly looking at the ethics. They were rewriting policies without even thinking about it, without even giving it so much as a second thought, really. And they're using data from all kinds of sources, which we're going to talk about. And I thought, okay, this is craziness. We have got to end all of the last second thinking on these things and thinking that AI is a cure-it-all as well. So, not that I don't think, I love artificial intelligence, but I think that expectations need to be set. And so I had to take out and do this. And you can see my whole story on LinkedIn if you want to look me up. You know, that'd be great, and leave your thoughts because I'm always interested in hearing what people have to say. I actually don't have the slide controller. Are we, is it over here? Okay, sorry about that. Be smarter than the machine. Here we go. Oh, but this is one of my favorite things, you know. So Emma Watson, she said several things. I actually, you know, data science is all about classification, is it not? I mean, this is what we're doing, basically, to get the data into the algorithm. You're gonna classify someone on the outer part of that. Once it goes through, it spits out a label on somebody, right? So we need to be very, very careful, very thoughtful about that. There's a lot at stake. There is a whole lot at stake, and you guys are so important to thinking this through. Think everything through. Everything is at stake. Not just from a corporate standpoint. When you think about brand reputation and return on investment, and you know, some people will spend multi-millions on their AI projects, and they'll get no return because they can't get past the prototype phase. So, I mean, think about these things, but then there's also the human factors. Safety. I mean, we're talking about self-driving cars now. You could literally be run over by AI. And I know a lot of people feel like their jobs are gonna cause them to be run over by AI. I mean, they're really worried about, well, what's going to happen here? So think about these things as you go through your work and how important you are. So if I leave you with nothing else today, the three things that I want to cover, I have a personal story for you. And this is actually very hard for me. This is the first time I'm ever sharing this story, and we'll get to it. And I call it, Let's Save the World. Oh no, what just happened? And then the second thing is, I want to give you a little bit of an insider view on what's going on with AI in some of the Fortune 500 companies, just to make us all feel better. Sometimes it's good to commiserate about these things. And then quickly, I want you to really think through, more than anything, if all you take from this is, I really need to go back and think about the impact that I myself am having, because believe it or not, 9 times out of 10 when I talk to data scientists and business leaders who are doing these things, they're not even thinking about the impact that they're actually leaving on the world. And so if that's all I leave you with, then I will be very happy at the end of this presentation. And hey, I think Fernando and I stole a style thing here, because I also wanted to put up some slides with some guys in here. So let me explain to you what I mean by the ethics of good intentions. What does that mean exactly? It's when these unintended consequences happen because you're not fully thinking through not just the challenge of the day, the moment that you've been given it, and the ambitiousness that sometimes follows, but think it all the way through to the impact and what it can actually be used for in the future. One example, and these are just regular scientists from back in the day, way old. This guy right here, he was doing work on hydrogen bombs, and then you see his quote over here. We had no idea he wasn't doing work on hydrogen bombs, excuse me. His work unwittingly led to work on hydrogen bombs. He was just looking at the nucleus of an atom, and oh, miraculously, someone used it for a bomb. How did that happen? This guy, which you should actually know because he redeemed himself by doing a Nobel Peace Prize, he actually had his stuff was used for people, blowing up people instead of mines. I mean, he thought thought he was establishing a safer way to blow up mines when he created dynamite. And instead in World War I or II, they were using it for blowing up people, unfortunately. This guy, does anybody recognize this guy? He's been on the news a lot, Alexander Kogan. This is the Facebook Cambridge Analytica scandal. And I bring these things up. I'm not here, you're gonna hear from my story and you can judge me accordingly. So I'm not judging, but I'm saying think things through, because this guy, he also, his whole job, did you hear this? His whole job, what he enjoyed doing was on kindness and well-being. That was his research. But he misguidingly decided to put out an app in Facebook to collect people's information and then profile them. And then, oh, by the way, Cambridge Analytica wanted that, and then they ended up, allegedly, because nothing's been proven yet, tampering with the U.S. elections. And some people find this, they're very serious about this in the U.S. Let's fast forward to this guy. This guy, Andrew Pohl, the reason his picture is so blurry is you don't see any pictures of him. He's the original New York Times article for the first creepy factor that went with data. I don't know if you guys ever saw it. It was an article called How Companies Get Your Secrets. That's kind of, oh my God, like you don't want to be seen on that kind of article. You want to think through these things. But basically what the gist of him, does anybody know this story? Just by show of hands? You do know this story? So basically what happened was he was able, by looking at all of what they were buying in the store, what different women were buying in the store, he was able to isolate in on second trimester even, if you look at this quote. That's pretty accurate. Pregnancy. But the problem is then they targeted people with that, right? So wasn't thinking it through, he was given a challenge by two marketing folks, basically. They said, so Andrew, can we find out about these pregnant women before they even know, or without them even knowing? And he said, oh yeah, I think I can do that. And then of course they did what marketing people do, and I know because I was a marketing person, we're kind of evil like that. We want to go target people with advertisements and products and things like that. Problem is, if you have someone at the household that doesn't know that you're pregnant, like the teenage girl's father, for example, who was like, why is Target sending you all these baby ads? It becomes a very uncomfortable breach of my personal trust as a consumer of Target. So you can see how the things that I put up on the first slide are suddenly very relevant. And all he was doing was meeting the challenge, by the way. At the time, he was ambitious and he loved playing with the numbers, and he even has several quotes in there about how much he loves, data science and analytics, and he literally just was meeting the challenge at the time, but he didn't think about what would happen down the line once the creepy factor was determined. So now I'm going to share with you my own personal story. And again, here we go. Back. Okay, here we go. So this is very hard for me, actually. So I want to just pose this to you guys. What if your team could reduce cancer? Just like Andrew Pohl, he could find pregnant people. I guess that's a special talent. What if your team was tasked with an excellent project with a key cigarette manufacturer to reduce cancer? Maybe it would raise your eyebrows a little, right? You'd say, this is interesting. But in order to do that, in order to meet the challenge, you have to find every heavy smoker on the planet, because you're going to convert them from a 256 carcinogenic, I know way much more about cigarettes than I should ever know now. I don't even smoke. But 256 carcinogenic things into only 4, which sounds better on the surface, right? But oh, by the way, there's a little twist later. But would you do it? Would you find all the heavy smokers? What would happen to those smokers if you could find them? Do you think anybody else would be interested in buying that list? Can you think of a few people, a few companies, a few corporations that might want to have that type of list that maybe wouldn't be working in the interest of the heavy smokers? I mean, we have to think about these things. This tore our team apart, thinking about the first part, which was we had this great opportunity put in front of us to reduce cancer significantly, theoretically. But then the purpose changed on us. The client changed on us. Wow, if you're able to do that. Has anybody experienced this? Oh, well, you were able to actually come up with something here. Maybe I want to do something different then. Maybe I want to sell that. And then all of a sudden you're thinking, wait a minute, but we own this. Don't we own this? Do we own this? Or do they own this? And then all of a sudden you're in a dispute and you don't have control of where this is going. And your best intentions suddenly got very ugly. And I know this is a very serious conversation we're having here, so I'm sorry to be the downer on this morning, but I just feel like we can all easily fall into this, easily. And in fact, what happened was it tore the team apart. I recused myself from the project for this particular group because the purpose started to change. And I could see that the intentions of this rising executive inside of this cigarette group was becoming not what I had wanted. And there was soon no control over who had who owned the ability to use the algorithm for what. So I say, learn from me. Make me also one of the people, like the most wanted that I just put up, those 4 guys. I'm one of those lessons as well. And if you want to talk to me later about your own situations, I'm more than happy to, and we can keep it secret, or if you want to, tell me. I'm actually putting all of my lessons into a book right now, so I invite everybody who's interested in contributing any of their own ethical dilemmas to come talk to me at some point during the event. So that's that story. I actually have 15 minutes to go. So what can go wrong here? I just want to come back to this real quick. There's lots and lots of places that I've used AI. And I'll just capture a few here. Although there's so many more, as you guys have all probably participated in projects. The 4 main themes, if you will, to the AI projects that I actually pursued, no matter which industries it was, no matter who it was that I was talking to, was basically around personalization including customer experiences, like digital platforms, CEOs. So I used to run CEO roundtables as well for IBM. I ran their Chief Data Officer program and their data science program for a long time. And one of the things that CEOs were always interested in is becoming the next Uber, next Airbnb. I want to become the next. And in fact, there was 3 guys from MIT that wrote a book about this, in a book called Platform Revolution, which I highly recommend actually, because it is a monster eater of AI solutions. I mean, trying to find the right customer and put them with the right product is all about machine learning. So that's what personalization is to me. And you can see over here who all is using that inside of companies. We got marketing and digital offices, innovation offices, sales offices. The other one I did was preserving and augmenting expertise. So this is my look for you into what corporate, Fortune 500s are doing. Everything from replacing retired or rare professions. So like even an oil rig group that we had, because they didn't have very many of the type of person, or how many of you know of exciting people who are going into the exciting field of actuary? That's not a very fun sounding field anyway. If you are an actuary, I apologize. My husband thought it was very fun sounding, but he's a finance guy, so take it for what it's worth. I thought, ooh, that's boring, but yeah, so we have a lot of youngsters that don't want to do this, surprise, surprise, so now we have to do an expertise system to get them caught up. But one of the things that's really funny, I have a good story with an insurance provider. I was telling Guillermo last night, I said, we go in to trade, we tell them, okay, great, I'm so happy that we want to do this kind of a system. Give us 5 of your best actuaries. Why 5? Because we can't have just 1. You can't have just 2, because this is like mom and dad, right? You may have somebody who's very soft in their approach in the way they would train a system, and then you have another expert who's going to be very different, and you want something balanced in the middle that you come out with, that you're going to train the new. And we always subscribe to the theory of augmented intelligence at IBM, so you should never really be trying to use this without a human in the loop. But they looked at us and they said, you're crazy. We're not going to give you 5 of our best actuaries. That's like worth $2.5 million. Now, never mind that they were investing like $18 million in the solution, but they wanted to give us the junior intern to train it. And I was like, And also, by the way, it was going to take like 6 months to train it. And I don't think many business clients are used to hearing that. They're not used to that expectation because they say, but this is software. Don't you just install it? I mean, how many times do we get that? All the time. All the time. Like you show up. Those are going to have to be trained. You're going to have experts. What kind of experts? When? When would that happen? Right away? Or are we going to have to do some development? So, I mean, those are the kinds of questions you get. Questions and support. This is actually one of the easier things, and this is where the chatbots come in handy. IT help desks, customer service, warranties, that kind of thing, first line sales. And then this last one was actually one of the last areas that I was taking on when I was leaving IBM, and that was in the compare and comply space. So you can have all kinds of different compliance solutions, like know your customer if you're in banking. Or in the last one, this is kind of where I say this is like a ledger-based system. So on one side, you've got a bunch of things that you're comparing to, and on the other side, you're saying, yeah, well, I'm not going to pay 1 cent over for a pen if you're in procurement. Or if you're in a legal situation, you'll say, I'm not going to pay 1 cent for that research that you did because I said I wouldn't pay for that in my legal guidelines here. So you're comparing. That's what those types of projects are. But that's basically what I was doing. And so throughout that, there were these areas that kept popping up. And just like Fernanda said, data was the #1 thing that kept going wrong every time. Like, and this is a totally fake number. I shouldn't even do this in front of data scientists. But if I had to estimate for myself how often, it would be a 90%. Like 90% of the time you show up, and then first there's this thought that I have perfect data as a client, so because my systems are working, so I must have perfect data, right? And I call it the 3 data disbeliefs. Like my systems are working, so I have perfect data. And then anytime someone would tell me that, I would just add 3 weeks to the project because you know it's going to be really nasty to go through all that data because they have no clue. But what I'm going to say here is, on the data front, there's a few cautions that you can really get into hairy ethical situations. One is, if you have so much data, because let's face it, some clients do, or some clients or some people that you work with may have access to a lot of data brokers and a lot of specialty data, and they may have lots of money for that kind of thing. And some of them don't even know what they're actually doing and where that data came from. So it's easy to get creepy when you have too much personal, sensitive information. So that's lesson #1. The other one is garbage in, garbage out. Make sure you look at that file and scrub it over really good. And do the lineage, do the work. Find out exactly where that data came from. Also, this is one that newer data scientists, younger data scientists, I would find, you know, they're looking at data and you're thinking, okay, regulations have changed. Or in the case of predictive policing, I don't know if you guys have ever followed this, come to find out, this old way of doing business does not produce a new outcome. So there's a lady named Kate Crawford who I love to follow from the AI Now Institute, and she was actually talking about police methods where they pull someone aside and frisk them just to show the rest of the neighborhood that they could. They thought that would reduce crime. Well, the newer way of policing was to partner and have pizza parties with people in the community and then get to know who were the actual people they should be worried about. But guess what? When they looked at the history, basically the algorithm would tell them, oh, well, you need to start arresting people like that again, because that was the most data they had, was data that dated way back and had that information, fake bookings and things like that. So you can't always look at data and say, hey, that's applicable to the new thing that I'm trying to drive, a new outcome that I'm trying to drive. And then the last one is data proxies, the wrong data proxies. Does anybody just use FICO score as your go-to responsibility type proxy? So when you're trying to come up with how responsible is someone. So for example, all of these new insurance solutions where they have the snitch devices, is what I call them, where you can go over, basically you go over the speed limit, it's going to report back to the insurance on that. Well, before they had those types of things, people would just say, well, how responsible is a driver? Let's attach FICO score or credit score of some sort. Well, guess what? That produced redlining. So I got to hurry this up. So quickly, data hormones. I call this data hormones, and this is another area where I think things get a little bit crazy is right before you're about to release a prototype, and you're just trying in very frenzied fashion to get as much data as you can, and so you'll do all kinds of things. Web scraping, you will go to open data and data brokers, but you don't always know about how they sourced it or what the collection methods were, like labeled faces in the wild. That's one. Did you know that's 80% men in that? So it has a hard time identifying women features, and it's also something like 77% white. So if you have an African American person, it won't even identify them. And I'll show you a picture where it identified an African American lady as a gorilla, which is, horrible. So, I mean, be careful about your sourcing and stuff. Business partner data, be careful, because you can get that data, you can get people, you may have a legitimate business partner relationship, but if you get someone in the marketing department at a legitimate business partner sends you data, you may be going over the creepy factors. So just check the policies, and if ever in doubt, give your customers options. Tell them what you're trying to do, send out an email to a select group of customers, and just ask them, is this going to be okay? And then if they don't give you the permission, then don't use their data. And then internal data bartering. I've seen this like crazy. And you can really get in trouble with GDPR at this point, General Data Protection Regulation. So just be very careful about that kind of stuff. And I am almost out of time, but I'm more than happy to talk about any of these things with you. What I really want to make sure that we hit, and here's just real quick, because I think this is interesting. Just remember, these are the kinds of, when we do classification projects, when you have algorithms, the outputs are going to be these kinds of effects, where you're going to deny someone resources potentially, maybe a mortgage, maybe health care, maybe some other kind of insurance. Be careful not to use FICO scores and credit scores, because they can result in redlining. I hope you guys are familiar with that, where you're literally not allowing the people who need it the most in some of the poorer districts to get what they need, because you've now opted them out just by nature of your algorithm. And then representational bias, which, and again, a lot of this comes from Kate Crawford's work, so I highly encourage you to look her up, but where they identified an African American woman as a gorilla, and when you put in things into, there's typical gender stereotypes that were emerging just from the data training sets. So look at your data training sets, understand what's in them. Make sure you go back and get everything you can about those, because you don't want to recreate bias. So this is it. I'm done. I'm at 0. I don't want to get the fist from Guillermo. But this is what I would say to you. Just speak up. If you have any problem speaking up in your company, if you see something going wrong, you have people that want to help. And in fact, compliance people right now are looking at setting data policies. So be careful. And if you ever need help, like our team did, don't hesitate to call your legal people. Don't hesitate to call your privacy officer or your information security officer. And that's it. This is how you can find me on LinkedIn. I've got a few articles out here for you. And by all means, come tell me, come talk to me.